Evelyn threw my helmet onto the equipment table in front of the entire station. It landed hard enough to rattle the face shield. My risk assessment was still in her hand. She had not opened it. She had only looked at the name on the cover. Adrian, you're a probationary firefighter, she said. You are not the incident commander. A few people in the training bay laughed under their breath. Nolan stood beside her with his gloves tucked into his belt. He made no effort to hide his smile. Rookies do this all the time, he said. They see one strange thermal image and decide the world is ending. I ignored him and slid the report back toward Evelyn. The East Harbor drill is built on wind data from 3 days ago. The warehouse added a lithium-ion energy storage system last month, but the hazardous materials inventory has not been updated, and the foam concentrate in our current stock is not rated for several of the polar solvents listed on the building permit. Evelyn's expression tightened. She was the incident commander for the joint exercise. She was also my wife of 7 years. No one at Station 12 knew that. Human Resources and the department's ethics officer did. We had filed the required relationship disclosure before my transfer, and I had been assigned to a different company and shift from Evelyn's regular crew. The joint exercise placed several companies under her temporary command, which the ethics office had allowed because every participant remained subject to the same written safety rules. Keeping the marriage private from the station had been her idea. She was competing for the next battalion chief opening and did not want anyone suggesting that my transfer had anything to do with her influence. I had agreed. More than agreed, actually, to avoid even the appearance of favoritism. I had volunteered to enter the city system at the lowest local classification and complete every certification from the beginning. My previous experience in wildfire support, mountain rescue, and aviation ground coordination counted toward my record, but it did not replace Ashbridge Fire and Rescue's structural response standards. I had been at Station 12 for 6 weeks. What I had not expected was that Evelyn would become so determined to prove she did not favor me that she would treat me as if my judgment had no value at all. Your assignment, she said, pushing the report back, is to inspect air packs and hose couplings. It is not to create panic before a scheduled operation. This isn't panic. These are conflicts between the plan and the source documents. Nolan tapped the laminated incident map hanging on the wall. The wind model came from the Municipal Emergency Center. Logistics verified the materials list. You've been here 6 weeks. Maybe learn to trust the system before you start accusing everyone else of incompetence. A system only records what people put into it, I said. If the input is wrong, the software does not take responsibility for the outcome. The room went quiet. Nolan's smile disappeared. Evelyn's voice turned colder. That's enough. Submit the report to Safety Officer Bell and return to your assigned position. If you refuse to participate in the exercise, I will document it as insubordination. I'm not refusing. I took the report, turned to the last page, and signed beneath my recommendations. Then I added one sentence in block letters. I have submitted a formal safety objection and do not certify the current plan as operationally sound. Nolan saw it first. What is that supposed to mean? It means I will follow lawful orders, I said. It also means I will not sign my name under a plan I believe is unsafe. Evelyn watched me for several seconds. There was nothing familiar in her eyes. No recognition from the woman who knew how I took my coffee or which shoulder still ached before a storm. There was only the impatience of a commander dealing with an inconvenient rookie. Put him on exterior water supply, she told Nolan. Keep him away from the interior teams. Nolan nodded. Perfect assignment. Hard to overthink a hose. I picked up my helmet and walked out without answering. Behind me, Evelyn resumed the briefing. She did not notice that the temporary command post marked on her map sat directly inside the danger zone I had highlighted in red. The drill never happened. Before the apparatus checks were complete, the station alarm dropped. A real fire had broken out in the East Harbor warehouse district. The first caller was a security guard from a freight company across the access road. He reported yellow smoke coming from the west side of Building 4, followed by several sharp explosions. Dispatch immediately converted the exercise deployment into an active hazardous materials response. The training bay erupted into motion. Doors slammed. Air packs came off racks. Engines started. Boots struck concrete in a rapid, practice rhythm. Evelyn stood in the center of the apparatus floor issuing assignments. Nolan, take the first attack crew. Second company establishes a backup line from the north hydrant. Exterior supply follows the tanker and stays outside the hot zone. Her gaze moved to me. That last part especially applies to you. I fastened my chin strap. Understood. Once our supply engine cleared the station, I pulled up the building file on the mobile data terminal. Nothing had changed. The warehouse was still listed as storing industrial paint, cleaning agents, and packaging materials. The new energy storage system did not appear anywhere in the response summary, but it did appear in the public construction permit database. I had checked that database that morning because high-capacity battery installations required a separate permit and emergency access plan. Fire personnel were legally authorized to review those records for pre-incident planning. I had not accessed anything confidential. I had simply looked in the one place the station briefing had ignored. The contractor had filed the permit. The warehouse operator had failed to update its hazardous occupancy report, and a software interface maintenance delay had prevented the permit data from feeding into the dispatch system. 3 small administrative gaps had lined up into one large operational lie. I keyed the radio. Command, exterior supply. Building 4 may contain an unlisted lithium-ion energy storage installation on the west side. Recommend expanding the isolation perimeter and confirming the current chemical inventory before entry. 2 seconds of silence followed. Then Nolan answered. Exterior supply. Keep the tactical channel clear. We are approaching the scene. The yellow smoke may not be ordinary polymer combustion. If fluorinated electrolyte is involved, the respiratory exclusion zone needs to be wider. Evelyn came onto the channel. I heard you, Adrian. Perform your assignment. A tone sounded in my headset. She had removed my priority access to the command channel. Marcus Hale, the senior firefighter sitting beside me, exhaled through his nose. You need to learn when to stop talking. If I'm wrong, I will. And if you're right? Marcus looked through the windshield and did not answer. The convoy entered East Harbor a few minutes later. Wind pushed in from the river and accelerated through the narrow lanes between the warehouses. Yellow-gray smoke hugged the pavement and rolled south in a low, heavy sheet. Evelyn's plan placed the command vehicle in the south loading yard. From inside the cab, I saw the smoke line bending directly toward it. Do not turn into that yard, I told our driver. He glanced at me. What? The wind has shifted. That loading zone is about to be inside the plume. I cracked the window and extended a portable wind meter into the slipstream. The reading was almost twice the speed listed in the incident plan. Marcus leaned over to look. That's nowhere near the briefing number. The briefing used the regional weather station. These buildings are creating a channel effect. I tried the radio again. Command, exterior supply. Local wind acceleration in the south corridor. Recommend moving the command post to the southeast rise. Nolan answered immediately. Stop interfering. All units deploy according to plan. Our engine slowed as the command vehicle ahead began turning toward the south yard. I looked at the driver. Keep going east. Commander said deploy as planned. She ordered us to establish exterior water supply. She did not order you to park inside a toxic plume. Marcus looked from the meter to the smoke and made the decision. Take the next block, he told the driver. We can feed from the east hydrant. The driver hesitated only a moment before turning the wheel. We had barely cleared the south lane when a deep blast rolled through the warehouse. A section of metal roof lifted into the air, spun once, and crashed into the exact space where the command vehicle had been preparing to stop. The tactical channel exploded with overlapping voices. First team has 0 visibility. Secondary flash on the west side. Command requests immediate wind update. Evelyn's voice remained controlled. All crews withdraw to the south loading yard. I grabbed the radio. The loading yard is entering the plume. Withdraw to the southeast rise. Nolan shouted over me. You are not command. Shut up. A second later, someone began coughing violently on the channel. Another firefighter reported contamination along the edge of his face-piece seal. Evelyn changed the order. All crews withdraw southeast. Repeat. All crews to the southeast rise. Marcus looked at me. He did not call me a rookie again. The first crews came out in staggered groups. Nolan was not among them. He had taken 2 firefighters into the west loading corridor to shut down what the pre-plan identified as a solvent transfer valve. Under the outdated building file, the decision made sense. If the new battery cabinets were nearby. However, the corridor could contain damaged cells, energized equipment, and accumulating flammable vapor. Evelyn ordered the rapid intervention crew to prepare for entry. The drone operator brought up thermal footage. 3 human-shaped signatures appeared inside the corridor. 2 were moving north. 1 remained still near the valve area. Nolan may be down at the end of the corridor, the operator said. I studied the screen. No. He turned toward me. What do you mean? No, the valve bay has overhead insulation. A person standing there should be partially shielded from the drone's angle. That image is too clean. I enlarged the feed. The stationary shape was narrow, symmetrical, and completely motionless. That's a reflected heat pattern from the process piping. The third firefighter may be down below the drone's line of sight. The operator shook his head. We can't see floor level. Then we cannot send a rescue team inside based on this image. Evelyn walked over. What are you basing that on? The permitted corridor layout. I reviewed it this morning. Why wasn't that information submitted to me? It was in the risk report you didn't open. Her face went still. The rapid intervention crew was already massed up. I pointed at the north wall on the drone map. There is a maintenance access door here. If it has not been permanently sealed, they can breach from outside and reach the corridor without crossing the west fire compartment. Nolan's radio broke through in fragments. Firefighter down, facepiece damaged, cannot find the exit. Evelyn looked at the screen, then at me. For the first time that day, she asked me a question in front of everyone. Are you sure the access door exists? I am sure it exists on the approved drawing. I am not sure it is still usable. The exterior needs to be checked before anyone commits. She turned to the rescue team. Move to the north maintenance access. Check wall temperature before breaching. I followed as they repositioned. Evelyn caught my arm. You stay outside the hot zone. The drawing is in my head. I can guide them from the boundary. You do not have City Interior Rescue certification. I know. I am not going inside. Her jaw tightened. Then she let go. The north wall was already heating rapidly when we reached it. Using the permit dimensions, I helped locate the original maintenance opening. A later tenant had hidden it behind steel shelving and insulated cladding. From the yard, it looked like a solid section of wall. The breach team pulled the shelving away and exposed the outline of the door. A saw touched the metal. Another muffled blast sounded inside. Stop. Everyone froze. I swept the thermal camera across the frame. Temperature was climbing fastest in the upper right corner. Pressure is building behind it. Do not open the full panel. The rescue captain looked at me. What do you recommend? Create a small relief opening low on the door. Keep everyone out of the direct path. Evelyn arrived in time to hear the exchange. She did not overrule me. The team punched a controlled opening near the bottom edge. Superheated gas and yellow vapor blasted through with enough force to scatter debris across the yard. If the crew had cut the entire door while standing in front of it, the pressure wave would have hit them at chest level. Once the compartment vented, they widened the opening and entered under a protected line. 2 firefighters emerged dragging an injured crew member between them. Nolan came out last. The edge of his facepiece was chemically damaged, and a burn had already begun swelling along his forearm. He saw me standing behind the exclusion tape. His first words were not thank you. You knew that door was there? I submitted the drawing and the risk report this morning. You could have told me directly. I did. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. A low thudding sound grew over the fire ground. A dark gray medium-lift helicopter crossed above the eastern warehouses. There was no polished corporate logo on the fuselage. Only a white emergency aviation mark and a hazardous materials support designation. It did not land at the scene. It continued towards Station 12, several miles away, where the athletic field beside the training tower had been cleared as a support landing zone. Dispatch came over the command channel. Aerial hazardous materials support has arrived at Station 12. Incident Command to confirm infrared reconnaissance, and Specialized Agent Deployment Authority. Evelyn looked toward the departing aircraft. Who requested aviation support? The Municipal Emergency Director escalated automatically after the building permit discrepancy and atmospheric readings were confirmed. Dispatch answered. Contract provider is Northwind Emergency Aviation. Marcus stood beside me. Northwind only responds under regional disaster contracts. I said nothing. I recognized the aircraft. It belonged to the Aviation Fire Response Organization founded by my mother, Helena Cross. She was not coming because someone at the station had mocked me. As far as I knew, she did not even know which unit I had been assigned to that day. Northwind had a standing contract with the city. When an incident involved an unregistered battery installation, toxic combustion products, unstable wind, and trapped responders, the Municipal Emergency Center could activate the company without speaking to anyone at the local station. Half an hour later, after tactical command at the warehouse had been formally transferred to an assistant chief, Evelyn brought me and several key personnel back to Station 12 for a joint technical briefing. The helicopter sat at the edge of the training field, rotors slowing. Everyone waited behind the marked safety line. 2 technicians in aviation protective gear stepped down first. Then a tall woman with silver-gray hair descended the cabin stairs. She wore a dark flight jacket and an identification badge naming her as Regional Aviation Technical Director. The field went silent. Helena did not look for me. She went directly to the Municipal Emergency Director, verified credentials, accepted the task packet, and began the handoff. We brought updated wind modeling, infrared spectroscopy equipment, and suppression agents suitable for mixed polar solvent and battery involvement. She said, "Aerial application will be limited to exterior cooling. We will not place agent through the roof until a structural specialist clears it." Her voice was precise and calm. There was nothing theatrical about her. Only after the operational transfer was complete did she notice me. Her eyes moved over my smoke-stained turnout coat and stopped on the probationary shield attached to my chest. Adrian Nolan, seated beside an ambulance, snapped his head up. Marcus turned toward me. Evelyn looked as if the air had left her lungs. I walked over. "Helena." She glanced at my shield. "You still haven't completed local certification? 2 modules left. Interior rescue and high-rise operations. Then continue under local rules." She did not call me son. She did not ask anyone to give me authority I had not earned. But everyone had heard the exchange. Safety Officer Bell looked between us. "You know each other?" Helena faced him. "I'm his mother." No one on the field made a sound. Nolan's face lost what little color the smoke exposure had left in it. Evelyn stood several yards behind me, motionless. Helena did not react to either of them. She accepted a tablet from one of her technicians and opened the incident file. "Who submitted the warning about the unregistered energy storage system and local wind acceleration?" Safety Officer Bell checked the document log. "Adrian Cross." Helena looked at me. "When?" 8:14 this morning. "Was it incorporated into the briefing?" Evelyn answered before Bell could. "No." Helena turned toward her. "Why not?" Evelyn's shoulders squared automatically. "The command review determined the information was incomplete." "Who made that determination?" "Nolan and I did." Helena tapped the screen. "The construction permit is valid. The foam inventory citation matches your own logistics database. The projected channel winds are within 4% of the aerial measurements we completed 20 minutes ago." She paused. The information was not incomplete. It was not checked. No one defended Evelyn. I did not either. Helena continued without changing her tone. "The contractor filed the battery installation properly with the building office. The warehouse operator failed to amend its hazardous occupancy declaration. Your fire data interface has been undergoing maintenance, so the permit did not migrate into dispatch records on schedule." She enlarged the foam inventory page. "The suppression problem also existed in the system. Procurement approved a universal substitute concentrate as a cost control measure. The approval memo required this station to maintain a separate reserve for polar solvents. That reserve shows as ordered, but I see no receiving confirmation." The logistics supervisor looked down. "The inventory system shows it as available." "Ordered is not available," Helena said. "A purchase record is not a delivery." Several people looked toward Nolan. Along with serving as Evelyn's operational deputy, he coordinated training supplies that quarter. "Procurement does not report to me," he said quickly. Helena did not accuse him. "Authority and responsibility will be established later. Right now, the fire is still moving toward the battery room." She projected a new wind map onto the station display. "The west compartment is no longer tenable. Ground crews should not return through the original entrance. We recommend aerial thermal mapping, limited exterior cooling, and a containment boom along the river drainage before runoff reaches the storm system." Evelyn recovered first. She began reassigning crews and coordinating public works support. This time, she did not exclude me from the information flow. She asked the Municipal Emergency Director to place me in the Joint Data Group, where I could compare permit drawings, drone imagery, and crew locations. The director reviewed my qualifications before granting anything. My file showed 6 years of ground coordination with Northwind on wildland fires, remote rescues, and aviation observation. I was not a pilot. I had never been a secret commander. I had not walked away from some glamorous executive position to play firefighter. I had simply spent years learning how fire moved when terrain, wind, limited access, and incomplete information turned a routine plan into a trap. None of that automatically qualified me for structural interior operations in Ashbridge. That was why I had started again as a probationary firefighter. The emergency director approved me as a technical liaison only. I could analyze risk and coordinate location data. I could not command crews or enter the hot zone. I accepted the limitation without argument. The incident lasted through the night. Northwind's helicopter did not perform a single dramatic drop that ended the fire. It mapped roof temperatures, cooled exterior exposures, and helped keep ground teams out of the changing plume. Hazardous materials specialists built runoff containment. Public Works closed the storm drains. Firefighters rotated through decontamination and air monitoring stations. The fire was controlled by dozens of people doing unglamorous work correctly for hours. Nolan suffered a moderate burn to his arm. Another firefighter inhaled a small amount of toxic smoke after his face piece seal was damaged. No one died. That did not make the incident minor. The west side of the warehouse was destroyed. 2 neighboring businesses had to close. A section of riverfront drainage required environmental cleanup. The city evacuated nearby night shift workers and paid for temporary medical screening. Rescuing 3 firefighters had not ended the consequences. It had only prevented them from becoming worse. The Fire Review Office opened a formal investigation before noon. Its scope included the warehouse's hazardous materials disclosure, the permit data delay, the foam purchase, the handling of my risk report, radio discipline, command decisions, and whether I had exceeded my probationary authority at the scene. Everyone involved received a preservation notice. We were told not to discuss testimony with one another. When I wrote my statement, I did not mention that Evelyn had embarrassed me in front of the station. I did not write that Nolan had called me a rookie as if it meant fool. Those things mattered to our marriage and to the culture of the station. But they did not prove why the operation had failed. I submitted facts that could be verified. The timestamp on my written risk report, the permit number for the battery installation, the foam model listed in inventory, my written refusal to certify the plan, radio traffic from the supply engine, the wind meter stored readings, time-coded drone footage, the approved building drawing showing the maintenance access. I had not secretly filmed anyone. I had not entered private accounts. No convenient witness appeared to confess everything. The evidence existed because ordinary systems had created records before anyone knew how important those records would become. Evelyn was removed from Major Incident Command while the review continued. She remained on duty, but only in a regular operational role. Nolan went on medical leave and lost access to logistics systems. I was restricted from hazardous response until investigators determined whether my actions at the scene had crossed the line between safety advice and command interference. That restriction cost me most of my overtime and specialty differentials. Rumors spread anyway. Some people said I had called my mother before the fire and arranged the helicopter to humiliate Evelyn. Others claimed Northwind had used its city contract to pressure the review office. Investigators checked my phone records. I had not contacted Helena before the aircraft was activated. The city's contract portal recorded the automated escalation, the emergency director's approval, the atmospheric readings, and the exact minute Northwind received the deployment order. The rumors did not vanish. Facts rarely defeat a useful story in a single day. That night, Evelyn and I drove home in silence. She threw her keys onto the entry table and turned on me before I had taken off my coat. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" "That you spent years at Northwind." "I did tell you. You said you worked in wildland support." "That was the work. Your mother founded a regional aviation response company. She founded an emergency aviation organization that contracts with cities. The helicopter belongs to the company. It is not a family toy." Her eyes were red from smoke. "Exhaustion. Or anger. Maybe all 3. Everyone at the station thinks I'm an idiot. Because you didn't know my resume? Because you let me treat you like an inexperienced recruit in front of everyone. I am an inexperienced recruit in this department. You knew those hazards were real. That is why I submitted the report. You could have told me privately how serious it was. I tried. You kept saying Nolan had already checked it." She went still. I continued. "I told you I had worked aviation ground operations. You said municipal structure fires were different from wildfires. They are. They are also still affected by wind." I took off my coat and hung it by the door. "I told you I had supported hazardous materials perimeter control. You called it contractor work. I told you local certification did not erase previous experience. You said I needed to learn humility." Her face slowly drained of color. "Are you keeping score now?" "No." I looked at her. I'm just done helping you forget. She walked to the dining table and braced both hands on it. Why didn't you tell me who Helena really was? You met her before our wedding. Evelyn looked up sharply. She said she worked in aviation safety. That is what she does. She never said she owned Northwind. That dinner was about meeting her future daughter-in-law. It was not an investor presentation. Evelyn opened her mouth and closed it again. For the first time, she seemed to understand that much of what she called secrecy was simply information she had never cared enough to ask about. Our marriage had revolved around her career. I knew every promotion panel she had faced, every overnight shift that left her shaking with exhaustion, every command review that kept her awake, and every fear she carried about being judged more harshly than the men around her. She knew my past as a sentence. He used to do some wildland work. The simple version had been convenient, so she had never asked for the longer one. Were you waiting for this? She asked. For what? For Helena to step out of a helicopter and prove you were never a rookie. If I wanted to use my mother to prove myself, I would not have joined your department at the lowest rank. I met her eyes, and I would not have stayed silent the first time you humiliated me in public. Then why did you transfer to my station? Because you said we had spent too many years living on separate schedules. You said if I entered municipal fire service, we would finally share a life instead of meeting between deployments. Her expression shifted. I thought you wanted me inside your world. I lowered my voice. What you wanted was for me to enter at a level that could never threaten you. That isn't fair. It may not be what you told yourself. It is what you did. She did not answer. The foam issues surfaced during the second week of the investigation. Station 12 was required to maintain a dedicated stock of alcohol-resistant concentrate for certain solvent incidents. The supplier had delayed the shipment. Instead of leaving the inventory status as pending, Nolan had changed it to available for deployment. He later said procurement had assured him the delivery was imminent. Procurement denied that. An email from the supplier showed the shipment had not even left the warehouse. Nolan had received the message. He had not deleted it because the city archived official mail automatically. During his interview, he said he had believed the chance of a real industrial incident before delivery was remote. Delaying the joint exercise would have harmed the station's quarterly evaluation. He also knew Evelyn's battalion chief panel would be reviewing her readiness record. He wanted to protect the exercise. He wanted to protect Evelyn's promotion. He wanted to be the deputy who made problems disappear. His motive did not erase what he had done. It did, however, explain why he had done it. Evelyn had not told him to falsify the inventory, but Safety Officer Bell had raised a question about the missing delivery before the briefing. Evelyn had told Nolan to resolve the paperwork after the exercise because she did not want visiting evaluators to see an unfinished logistics issue. The investigators asked why she had not read my report. She said she believed I lacked enough city fire experience to evaluate a complex warehouse operation. They placed my qualification record in front of her. Then they compared each part of my report to the scene data. I had not been right about everything. My estimate of how quickly the smoke would cross the south yard had been too aggressive. I had also failed to predict an illegal interior wall built by the warehouse operator after the approved permit. But the core warnings were sound. The battery system was unlisted in the dispatch plan. The local wind was stronger than the regional model. The available foam was unsuitable for part of the fuel load. The proposed command post was in danger. The maintenance access offered a viable rescue route. The preliminary report contained one sentence that spread through the station faster than any rumor. The warning was disregarded not because it lacked a factual basis, but because the probationary status of the person who submitted it improperly reduced the weight assigned to the information. No insult Evelyn could have thrown at me would have landed harder. That sentence did not call her cruel. It called her judgment biased. She did not come home the night the preliminary report was issued. In the past, I would have waited. I would have cooked something she could reheat after midnight. I would have kept the porch light on. When she finally walked through the door, I would have listened while she replayed every question from the review board and every expression on every face. That night, I made dinner for one. I packed the leftovers into a container. There was no second portion in the refrigerator. She returned after 1 in the morning and stood in the kitchen doorway. You didn't wait for me. You didn't say you were coming home for dinner. You never needed me to say it before. I thought waiting was something we shared. Her eyes moved to the single container in the refrigerator. And now I'm not sure how much of our life was ever shared. Her expression changed. This is because I made one bad call at work? No. I set my glass in the sink. It is because you did not consider that I might be worth listening to until Helena stepped out of that helicopter. That isn't true. If she had not arrived, what would have happened? Evelyn said nothing. You would have kept treating my report as rookie anxiety. You would have credited Nolan for the rescue. You might have filed an insubordination note against me. I can make sure that does not happen. You haven't filed it yet. That is not the point. No. The point is that you still think correcting a record can correct what happened between us. She stepped closer. I was wrong. I admit that. We can go to counseling. After the investigation. Why wait? Because right now you are afraid. Afraid of what? Losing the promotion. Losing your team's trust. Losing the marriage. I need to know whether you still respect me when those fears are no longer pushing you. Tears gathered in her eyes. You don't trust me. I did. I walked past her toward the guest room. That trust did not protect either of us. For the next month, we lived in the same house like two people whose shifts never overlapped. Evelyn began handling the parts of our life I had quietly managed for years. She discovered the homeowner's policy was due for renewal before winter. She did not know I compared coverage every year instead of automatically accepting the increase. She discovered the basement smoke detectors used specialized backup batteries. She did not know I tested them every quarter. Her father, Arthur, was due for a home safety assessment after a minor fall. I had arranged the previous visits to a community aging program. The renewal date passed before Evelyn realized the referral had expired. She came home holding her phone like evidence. Why didn't you remind me about Dad's assessment? I opened the email I had sent 2 days after the fire. I transferred every household deadline to you when I was placed on restricted duty. I was under investigation. So was I. But he is my father. Exactly. She stared at the screen. You would never have done this before. I put everyone else's needs ahead of mine and called it reliability. That sounds like a good quality. Not when everyone treats it as permanent infrastructure. She sat on the edge of the couch. I got used to you handling things. That is the problem. She began to understand that I had not stopped caring. I had stopped automatically filling every gap she left behind. The formal hearings began after Nolan returned from medical leave. He came with a union representative and an attorney provided through his professional liability coverage. He admitted changing the foam inventory status. He insisted Evelyn had created pressure by repeatedly saying the joint exercise could not be postponed. According to him, she had demanded that every readiness issue be resolved before the evaluation team arrived. Some of that was true. What he could not prove was that she had ordered him to falsify a delivery status. What Evelyn could not prove was that she had clearly forbidden it. The two people who had once trusted each other without question were now defining the exact borders of their individual responsibility. I stayed out of that fight. When the panel questioned me, I answered only what I had personally done, seen, or documented. After being removed from the core planning team, one investigator asked, "Why did you continue reviewing the building permit?" Because I remained part of the response assignment. Exterior water supply still requires knowledge of the building hazard. You advised the driver to deviate from the convoy route. Do you consider that a refusal of command? No. The order was to establish exterior supply. No order required our apparatus to enter the south loading yard. By then, the plume had crossed the route. Did you take control of the vehicle? No. Did you threaten or coerce the driver? No. I presented the wind reading and recommended an alternate hydrant. Marcus submitted an independent statement confirming that account. The driver did the same. The panel then turned to the north wall breach. You were ordered to remain outside the hot zone. I remained outside it. You advised the rescue team on the location and venting procedure. Yes. Were you acting as a commander? No. I identified a structural feature from an approved drawing and a pressure hazard visible on a thermal camera. The rescue captain retained authority over the breach. The captain confirmed that as well. The final report cleared me of insubordination and of exceeding my probationary role. I returned to full station duties. The overtime and specialty pay I had lost during the review were not restored. Department policy allowed temporary restrictions without retroactive compensation when the restriction had been imposed in good faith. I did not call that justice or injustice. It was simply part of the cost of an investigation that had needed to happen. Evelyn lost eligibility for that year's battalion chief process. She was ordered to complete additional training in command bias, hazardous materials response, and risk communication. She was not fired. She was not permanently stripped of command authority. The city concluded that her errors had been serious, but not intentional attempts to endanger personnel. Nolan lost his logistics coordination assignment and received formal discipline for the false inventory status. Until he completed retraining, he could not serve as an operational deputy. No one's life vanished in one afternoon, but the career paths they had planned so carefully stopped moving. That was what consequences usually looked like. Helena called after the report was issued. Are you staying at Station 12? I'm finishing my certification. And after that? I don't know. Northwind has an opening in ground operations. I'm not applying. Because of Evelyn? Because you run the organization? If I go back now, everyone will say I was rescued by my mother. Helena gave a quiet laugh. They already say that. Then I have even more reason not to prove them right. She did not argue. All right, if you apply elsewhere, I can provide your employment and qualification record. Only the facts. Only the facts. Helena had always understood something Evelyn had not. Support did not mean opening every door for me. It meant making sure I had an honest record of the doors I had already walked through. I completed the remaining city certifications over the next 4 months. The interior rescue exam was the last one. Evelyn sat on the assessment committee by rank, but she recused herself before my evaluation because of our marriage and the ongoing counseling process. It was the first time I had seen her consider a conflict rule before considering how the recusal might look to other people. I passed. My score was not the highest in the class. It was not the lowest either. No one gave me extra credit because Helena Cross was my mother. When the department issued my full Firefighter shield, Marcus found me beside the apparatus bay. Congratulations. Thank you. He shifted his weight. I called you a rookie too. You were accurate. I was new to the city system. We acted like new men useless. I fastened the shield to my coat. Remember that when the next recruit notices something you missed. Marcus nodded. I will. Evelyn waited in the parking lot after the ceremony. She held a small presentation box. Inside was a polished private badge engraved with my name and certification date. I wanted to give it to you myself, she said. Is it department issue? No. I ordered it. Then I don't need it. Her hands tightened around the box. I was trying to celebrate you. Then say congratulations. She swallowed. Congratulations, Adrian. Thank you. For a moment, embarrassment crossed her face. In the past, she would have covered it with anger. This time she lowered the box. Our counselor gave me an assignment, she said. She asked me to list what I actually know about you. I waited. I wrote for a long time. Most of what I wrote was about what you do for me. Her eyes dropped to the asphalt. I know you cook when you're anxious. I know you can repair almost anything in the house. I know you wait up when I work nights. She took a slow breath. But I didn't know which kind of incident scares you most. I didn't know why you left Northwind. I didn't know what you wanted from a fire service career. I didn't even understand what your mother's company actually did. She looked at me again. I mistook familiarity for knowing you. I treated your care as if it were your whole value. It was the first time she had named the real problem without turning it into a debate about one report or one fire. I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired. Late understanding could still be sincere. Sincerity did not automatically make repair possible. Do we still have a chance? She asked. I looked across the lot at the training tower. Months earlier, she had stood there while the station laughed and told me to stay away from the real work. I applied for a transfer. Her head came up. Where? Greyhaven Regional Fire Academy. They need an assistant instructor with aviation coordination and urban hazardous materials experience. When did you apply? After the investigation closed. Why didn't you tell me? Because it was my professional decision. You used to discuss every decision with me. I used to believe your decisions made room for me too. Her eyes filled. Adrian, I can change. I believe you can. Then give me time. Your time cannot keep being paid for with my risk. She reached for my sleeve. I'm trying. I know. Is there someone else? No. Did you stop loving me? I considered lying because the truth would have been easier to misunderstand. No. That is not why I'm leaving. Then why? Because love is not enough reason to keep handing someone authority over a life they do not respect until other people validate it. Her fingers loosened. Have you decided on divorce? I have an appointment with an attorney. The color left her face. All of this because of what happened at the station. What happened at the station showed me what our marriage had become. I kept my voice calm. You began learning who I was only after someone else proved I had value. I cannot spend the rest of my life waiting for the next helicopter to make you listen. I never loved Nolan. I know. I never meant to hurt you. I know that too. Then how can you end 7 years over a mistake? Harm does not require an affair. It does not require malice. Sometimes it is simply what happens when one person's pride matters more than the other person's voice for too long. A tear slipped down her cheek. What can I do? Keep what you learned. For us? For the next recruit who tells you something you do not want to hear. For the next firefighter whose rank makes it easy to dismiss him. For yourself. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she nodded once. And us? We'll handle that through the proper legal process. Our divorce was not simple because we both wore uniforms. The house was jointly titled. Our retirement accounts contained marital contributions. Evelyn earned slightly more than I did. My temporary loss of overtime did not automatically become a debt she owed me. Her professional misconduct did not entitle me to a larger property share. The Ashbridge courts used no-fault dissolution. The court cared about disclosure, valuation, and whether the agreement was voluntary, not about which spouse had ignored a safety report. We exchanged bank records, retirement statements, mortgage documents, insurance policies, and tax returns through counsel. I did not ask Helena to make calls. I did not threaten Evelyn's job. I did not seek money that was not legally mine. The house was eventually listed for sale. We divided the net proceeds under a negotiated agreement. Evelyn retained most of her retirement account after an equalizing payment. I kept the tools and savings I had owned before the marriage. We each paid our own legal fees. We both lost part of a future we had assumed would belong to us together. That was the real cost of divorce. During mediation, Evelyn asked to delay the sale. How long? I asked. I don't know. I need time to adjust. Who pays the mortgage during that time? We both do. Who handles repairs? We can decide later. What is the exit date? She looked at her attorney. Her attorney looked down at the draft. There was no answer. I declined. A few weeks later, she proposed holding the house jointly for 6 months. My lawyer requested a written payment schedule, maintenance division, occupancy terms, and a mandatory sale date. Evelyn never completed the proposal. Once a promise had to become an enforceable plan. The weakness in all that hopeful uncertainty became visible. The sale went forward. On the last evening in the house, Evelyn stood in the empty kitchen while I packed the final box of tools. You really planned all of this without me, she said. I planned my exit after you made it clear I could not safely plan a future with you. I keep thinking about the report. So do I. I opened it again last week. I taped the box closed. There was a coffee stain on the first page, she said. I must have set my cup on it that morning. I remembered the ring of brown on the cover. You never read past the title. No. Her voice broke on the word. I keep wondering how different the day would have been if I had spent 5 minutes reading it. The fire would still have happened. The warehouse still would have been wrong. The software still would have been delayed. Nolan still might have changed the inventory. I lifted the box. But the command post would have moved. The foam issue would have been exposed. The first team might never have entered the west corridor. And us? I stopped at the doorway. If you had read it because you respected the work, maybe we would have faced the rest together. She pressed her lips together. If you had read it only because you were afraid I would leave, we would still be here eventually. Evelyn looked around the empty room. I thought you would always give me another chance to correct things. That was part of the problem. She did not ask me to stay that night. Perhaps she had finally understood that another plea would only ask me to carry the weight of her realization. Greyhaven Regional Fire Academy did not treat me like a finished product. I started as an assistant instructor. My job included setting up training props, reviewing lesson plans, logging equipment, and standing at the back of classrooms while senior instructors taught. Everyone there knew I had worked with Northwind. Most of them also knew Helena was my mother. That did not make me a captain. It did not excuse me from academy standards. Every course design required supporting evidence. Every practical session was evaluated. Recruits submitted anonymous feedback, and some of it was blunt. One class said I spoke too quickly when discussing chemical fire behavior. Another said my incident maps were too dense. I revised both. There was relief in being corrected by people who had actually examined the work. One of my first teaching assignments covered authority bias in emergency decision-making. I anonymized the East Harbor incident. I removed names, station numbers, and anything related to my marriage. The class received the same risk memo in 3 versions. One version identified the author as a probationary firefighter. One identified the author as a senior safety officer. One had no rank at all. The evidence was identical. The class rated the senior officer's memo as more credible. When I revealed that the documents were the same, several recruits looked uncomfortable. A young firefighter in the front row raised her hand. What if the rookie is wrong most of the time? Then check the facts, I said. So we should trust every warning? No. You should not believe information because it comes from a recruit. You also should not reject it for that reason. I pointed to the 3 papers. The object of professional judgment is the evidence, not your pride. After class, I found an email from Evelyn in my academy account. She had completed the remedial command program and regained authority over limited incidents. She did not mention reconciliation. She wrote that she now required anyone raising a concern to state the source, the risk, and the action requested. Some objections turned out to be weak. Others exposed details senior personnel had missed. Her last paragraph was brief. I finally understand that respect is not a reward you give someone after they prove they are exceptional. It has to exist before the proof, or the person with less status may never get a fair hearing. I read the message twice. The next morning, I replied with one sentence. I hope you keep remembering that. She answered almost immediately. I will. Our divorce became final a few weeks later. There was no dramatic courtroom confrontation. The judge confirmed our identities, reviewed the settlement, asked whether our financial disclosures were complete, and made sure either of us had been forced to sign. Evelyn said she understood. So did I. Outside the courthouse, she stood beside me beneath a covered walkway while rain darkened the steps. I kept the badge, she said. The one you ordered? She nodded. I know you didn't want it. It was never about the badge. I know that now. She rubbed her thumb over the edge of her folder. I used to think you wanted people to know how experienced you were. I wanted you to care enough to ask. Her eyes lowered. That's worse. It is more honest. She looked toward the street where our attorneys had already gone separate ways. Do you hate me? No. Does that make this easier? No. She gave a small, strained laugh. I keep wanting there to be one thing I can fix. There are many things you can fix. Her face lifted with fragile hope. Just not by using me as proof that you fixed them. The hope faded, but she did not argue. I understand. I believed she did. Understanding was no longer the same as access to my life. A year after East Harbor, Greyhaven sent me back to Ashbridge for a regional joint exercise. By then, I was teaching parts of the hazardous materials coordination course on my own. I still checked every lesson with a senior instructor. I still made mistakes. I still carried equipment when the academy needed another pair of hands. The work felt honest. At Station 12, the apparatus floor looked smaller than I remembered. Evelyn had returned to steady operational duty. She had not reapplied for battalion chief. At least not yet. We met near the equipment racks. Greyhaven treating you well? She asked. Yes. I heard you're getting your own class next month. That's the plan. Congratulations. Thank you. There was no hidden plea in her voice. No demand that I turn the moment into something larger. Across the bay, a probationary firefighter was showing Nolan an irregular pressure reading from a pump panel. Nolan had returned to a regular company assignment after completing discipline and retraining. He was no longer the logistics coordinator or Evelyn's operational deputy. The old Nolan would have waved the recruit away. This time, he asked her to pull the instrument history. They stood together and compared the readings. Evelyn followed my gaze. Some consequences don't disappear, she said, but people can decide whether they learn anything from them. That's true. She looked at me. Helena doing well? She still flies whenever her board lets her. A faint smile touched Evelyn's mouth. The day she stepped out of that helicopter. I thought the humiliating part was that I didn't know your family background. She paused. Later I realized the humiliating part was needing a helicopter to prove that your warning deserved attention. If she had not come, the review still would have found the records. Eventually matters. So does what happens before eventually. I nodded. She looked toward the training tower. I could have lost more people. The aircraft did not save the incident by itself. No. All the records mattered. The firefighters who questioned the route mattered. The rescue captain who changed the breach plan mattered. You changing the withdrawal point mattered. Her eyes moved back to me. You still preserve the part of the record that helps me. Facts do not need to be distorted to punish someone. Her smile turned bitter. That may be the clearest reason I lost you. I did not answer. She was not wrong. I had not left so she would suffer forever. I had not left to prove I was the better firefighter. I had left because I no longer wanted a life in which I had to wait for outside authority before I was allowed to trust my own judgment. At the end of the exercise, rotor noise rolled across the training grounds. A Northwind helicopter crossed the horizon on a scheduled regional patrol. It did not land. Several recruits looked up. One of them recognized the insignia and turned to me. "Is that your mother's helicopter?" "It belongs to her company." What did it feel like the first time she landed here? I thought about the question. Quiet. Because everyone was shocked? No. I watched the aircraft disappear beyond the training tower. Because everyone finally stopped talking long enough to look at the facts. The recruit nodded as if he understood, though I was not sure he did. I pulled on my jacket. "Do not wait for a helicopter to prove that someone deserves to be heard," I told him. "Check the evidence while it is still only a report on your table." When I crossed the yard, Evelyn remained near the equipment bay. She did not follow me. She did not ask for another chance. By then, she understood that regret was not valuable because it could recover the person you lost. Sometimes its only value was preventing you from becoming the same person again. For a long time, I believed I needed everyone at Station 12 to know what I had done before I arrived there. I thought that was the only way to erase the word rookie. Eventually, I understood that the label had never been the real problem. What mattered was that I had filed the report according to procedure. I had preserved the supporting documents. I had stayed outside the authority I did not possess. I had refused to let rank, ridicule, or marriage pressure me into certifying a plan I believed could hurt people. Helena's helicopter did not make me more valuable. It arrived at the most dramatic possible moment, and forced everyone to notice facts they had been free to verify all along. My mother's identity was not what carried me out of Station 12. I left because I finally understood that a person who respects me only after an entire field falls silent is not someone I should spend the rest of my life waiting for. That day, the fire taught Evelyn to listen. It taught Nolan that making problems disappear on paper does not make the risk disappear in the world. It taught the station that experience can arrive wearing a probationary shield. What it taught me was harder. Being useful is not the same as being respected. Being needed is not the same as being known. And love that requires me to keep proving my right to speak is not safety. I did not destroy Evelyn's career. I did not use Helena's name to take power. I did not win by watching anyone lose everything. I submitted the warning. I preserved the evidence. I completed the certification. I accepted the transfer. Then I walked away from a marriage that had room for my labor, my patience, and my silence, but not for my judgment. The next time a risk report lands on my desk, I will read it before I look at the name on the cover. That is what I carry forward. Not the laughter in the training bay. Not the helicopter on the field. Not even Evelyn's regret. Only the certainty that no one should have to become extraordinary before the people closest to them decide their voice is worth hearing.